Nvidia has found itself in the middle of a chip war between the US and China. Washington has blocked sales of its high-end chips to China, and now Beijing has gone a step further with its internet regulator banning tech giants like Alibaba and TikTok owner ByteDance from buying even the downgraded versions of Nvidia's chips tailored for China, according to the Financial Times. That has opened the door for domestic players to step in. From Huawei to Alibaba, Chinese firms are racing to build homegrown AI chips, pouring in billions, much like the country's earlier push into electric vehicles. The question is whether they can rival Nvidia's dominance. To help us make sense of this pivotal moment, we spoke with Chris Miller, author of Chip War and a leading voice on global semiconductor strategy. China's regulators have gone beyond discouraging Nvidia. They've outright banned companies from buying some of its AI chips. Why now?
I think there are two aspects to China's decision making. One is that China is preparing for a trade negotiation with the United States and looking to build leverage in advance of those talks with President Trump. So we've seen not only these restrictions on Chinese firms' ability to buy AI chips, but also fewer soybean purchases from the United States and other measures that are largely, I think, to be interpreted as part of the leverage building process before the trade negotiations. That's reason number one. The second reason is longer term in duration, which is that China doesn't want to have to rely on semiconductors or really any manufactured good from the outside world. And what we've seen over the last couple of decades is that China's learned to produce almost everything domestically. Chips are the one product that China still imports at scale because, at least right now, China can't produce the most cutting edge chips at the large volumes that are needed to meet its own domestic demand.
And what domestic Chinese chip companies do you see as the most credible challengers to Nvidia, and why?
The most important by far is Huawei, which has a background in telecoms equipment, then diversified into the smartphone market, and now makes a whole range of products in the electronics sector. And AI chips are its newest and most important type of product. Huawei is an extraordinarily capable company. It's got a long history in chip design. Its key bottleneck right now is in the manufacturing of these chips because the leading Chinese companies can't access the most advanced chip making tools, equipment that's produced in Europe or the United States or Japan. And as a result, they can't produce large enough volumes of high-end chips, at least not yet, to meet China's domestic demand. And so the key challenge for Huawei is helping its partners, the actual chip manufacturers in China, scale up their production so that they can produce thousands and eventually millions of these chips.
And NVIDIA's chips are used for both training AI models and running them once they're built. How far behind are Chinese companies on each of those fronts?
Well, it's a hard question to answer because we don't exactly know how to measure. There are different ways that you can measure it. We know that when given the choice, Chinese companies prefer to buy NVIDIA's chips, which is why they bought very large volumes of them over the past couple of years. And even though NVIDIA is not allowed by the US government to sell the most advanced chips it produces, Chinese companies still buy the less advanced versions, which speaks to the problems that Huawei has in producing high-end chips at large volumes. But I think we also know that Huawei's been making some progress alongside its partners in the Chinese semiconductor industry. And we should expect that it produces larger volumes of AI chips going into the future. The question is just how much. Can China begin to meet its domestic demand? Can it begin to produce chips for exports? Right now, it's a long way away. And the key goal of both Chinese policymakers as well as Huawei and all of its partners are to try to find ways to ramp up chip production.
And if Huawei does eventually, take a larger share of that market in China and Nvidia is increasingly shut out, how big of a financial hit could the company take, and how might it reshape its global business?
Well, we've seen actually China play a smaller role in NVIDIA's sales over the last couple of years, both because AI demand in the US has been so strong from OpenAI and Google and AWS and others, but also because the US has limited the ability of NVIDIA to sell its most advanced chip to China's. So there's been both factors impacting NVIDIA relying less today on China than it did 5 years ago. I think the key question, though, is when will China be able to produce enough of the high-end chips it needs domestically? What we find in other sectors is that the moment China can produce cutting-edge products at home, it dramatically reduces, in some cases just stops buying foreign-made products. And so that's the risk that NVIDIA faces, just like every other manufacturer. If China can do what you can do, it stops buying your products. And we should assume that over some time horizon, China, as it approaches the cutting edge and begins to scale up its production, it feels comfortable in just blocking use of foreign chips because it can produce them at home.
And some analysts say Beijing's ban isn't just about tech readiness, but also about gaining leverage in trade talks with Washington. Do you see Nvidia being used as a bargaining chip in broader US-China negotiations?
Well, I'd certainly say its products are at the center of these negotiations. I think we've seen expectation that agricultural products like soybeans will be negotiated, that aircraft sales will be negotiated, and I think I wouldn't be surprised to see chips negotiated as well. And these high-end AI accelerators, China wants them because they can't produce enough of them at home, at least right now, and that's why China is going to be trying hard to get access to increasingly advanced semiconductors, I think, in the result of the trade negotiations.
All right, Chris, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Now, just as electric vehicles reshaped China's auto industry, AI chips could shape its tech future. The question, can these homegrown challengers close the gap with Nvidia? For Investors Business Daily, I'm Clara O'Connor.